We will be learning today one of the most important topic, that is the Salmonella, which is one of the causative agent for typhoid. You must have heard about the typhoid, and it also involved in the causation of the gastroenteritis and food poisoning. So Salmonella typhi is the main species in this group, but there are several species which are included in this group, that is Salmonella. If we talk about the morphology, these are the gram-negative bacilli and measuring in the size of 1 to 3 micrometer into 0.5 micrometer in size. If you remember the structure which I have given you about the morphology, Graham's nature and size has been covered in this slide, and then the next point was about the motility. So these are the organisms which are motile with peritricate flagella except Gallinarum polurum. So you remember this could be one of the MCQ, which amongst the following is the non-motile, and they might give you the option as Salmonella typhi, Salmonella typhimurium, Salmonella enteritica and Salmonella Gallinarum polurum. So you just have to write non-motile is Salmonella Gallinarum and polurum. This organism does not consist of capsule. Of course, they are non-acid fast. You know which organism is non-acid acid fast, that is Mycobacteria. All other than Mycobacteria non-acid fast. And non-spore bearing. We know only spore bearing organisms are Clostridium and Bacillus. All rest of the organisms are non-sporing, which are there in your syllabus. And they also possess the fimbriae. Fimbriae, you know, this is very important for in the attachment to the host cell and also important in the role of sexual reproduction. Now coming to the cultural characteristics, these are aerobic and facultative anaerobe. So if you remember in the cultural characteristics points, majority of the organisms we talk about or we study about are aerobic to facultative anaerobe. Only except the Clostridia, which are strictly anaerobes, and there are certain non-sporing anaerobes which are also included as a strict anaerobes. So these are the aerobic to facultative anaerobic. It means that they can also grow better if the oxygen tension is less. It doesn't affect their growth. And one of the important characteristics of the cultural characteristics is that they grow readily on simple media, and the simple media, you all know that it is the nutrient medium or nutrient agar. That is the simplest form of culture media. They can grow better on the simple media. It means that they do not require any special nutrients for their propagation. The pH range is 6 to 8, but they better grow at near about the neutral pH plus or minus 2. And the temperature range is also very wide, that is from 15 degrees Celsius to 41 degrees Celsius, but the majority of the organisms, they grow better at 37 degrees Celsius. As we all know that the body temperature of humans is 37 degrees Celsius. So that is an optimal temperature which is required for better growth. Initially the colonies are tiny, microscopic. Later on they become large, circular, with low convex and smooth. If you see the growth on the MacConkey agar, it is colorless or ochre color. It means that the organism is non-fermenter. That means lactose is non-fermenting by this organism. That is why the growth of Salmonella will be colorless. And if the organism is producing the pink color colony on the MacConkey agar, it means that they are lactose fermenting. So the Salmonella group is non-lactose fermenters. Then you can see the jet black color Wilson and Blair media you can use as a selective medium, where you can see the jet black color. So it is easy to grow these organisms, identify on the basis of the morphological characteristics on the culture media, that is Wilson and Blair. WB stands for Wilson and Blair, where they produces jet black colonies except the Paratyphi A, which produces the green colonies. So it is easy to use to identify these organisms on the basis of the color they produce on these selective medium. The selenite F is used as enrichment medium. Generally, enrichment medium are the liquid medium which is used to selectively allow to grow the organisms of interest. If shigellosis is there, that means it is causing any diarrheal diseases, then you will have to inoculate the stool sample into the selenite F, which will allow selectively only to grow this Salmonella species and not the other species. So this is very useful characteristics of the enrichment media, which is selenite F. Now coming to the biochemical reactions, here you can see one tube which is black in color in the middle and then yellow color in the base. This is the triple sugar ion agar, where the organisms are able to produce the H2S gas, because of which there is a blackening of the medium. The H2S production leads to blackening of the medium, and yellow stands for non-fermentative or non-oxidative fermentation. Okay, that means the organism is fermenting the sugar, but in the absence of oxygen. They ferment glucose, mannitol, maltose and forming acid and gas. Only except the Salmonella typhi, which is an anaerogenic, and lactose sucrase are not fermented. That is why on MacConkey agar you will get the growth of colorless or ochre color. There is no indole production by these organisms. Methyl red is positive, Vogus Presbyr is negative. When MR is positive, always remember VP is negative. So if you remember MR, you can write the VP. Very rare organisms are there which can be positive for both, but they are not in your syllabus of the organism in the syllabus. Citrate positive, this is one of the important characteristics of this organism, but urease negative. This is again one of the differentiating characteristics from the other non-lactose fermenting organisms. H2S is positive except Salmonella paratyphi A. So Salmonella paratyphi is H2S negative. Salmonella cholera suis and other species. These are again two species which are H2S negative. If you look at the biochemical characteristics of typhoid and paratyphoid bacilli by fermentation of glucose, xylose, D-tartrate and mucate, you can see here there are acid and gas majoritarily produced by these organisms. Glucose is the simplest form of sugar, that's why all species of Salmonella are able to degrade the glucose, but except the Salmonella typhi, which does not produce any gas. Otherwise, all of them could able to ferment the glucose with production of gas. And paratyphi A cannot ferment xylose, D-tartrate and mucate. So this is again one of the differentiating characteristics of paratyphi A from typhi and paratyphi B and also paratyphi C. If you look at the paratyphi C, glucose, xylose and D-tartrate are generally fermented with production of acid as well as gas. And D is generally variable. So majority, all the sugars are fermented by the Salmonella typhi. Now coming to the resistance of these organisms. Why do we study resistance? I have told you in last lecture, probably if you remember. It is essential to know resistance of the bacteria if they get exposed to the environment. How many hours or how many minutes or how many days or how many months they survive in that adverse condition. As you all know that they are non-spore bearing, so they cannot produce spores, which is one of the dormant stage of the organism, which is essential for survival even in the adverse condition. But as you know that these are non-sporing aerobes or facultative anaerobes, they cannot produce spores. So how much time they stay in the environment or any other medium live, that is nothing but is a resistance. If you look at, they can get killed at 55 degrees Celsius in 1 hour or 60 degrees Celsius in 15 minutes. That is why the pasteurization method is, sterilization method is 60 degrees Celsius for half an hour, 63 degrees Celsius to be precise. So even boiling or chlorination of water or pasteurization of milk can kill the bacteria. Polluted water and soil, where these organisms survive for weeks, and in ice for months. So generally when you are having ice or the stored ice creams or any other things, possible that if they get contaminated with these salmonella organisms, they might cause the infection in those people. Drying cultures remains for years. So this is something, again, one of the important resistance shown by the organisms. So on the culture medium they remain for years, but they can be killed by 5% phenol. So phenol is one of the important disinfecting agent which can be used to kill these microorganisms. Antigenic structure has different antigens on their surfaces. The flagellar antigen is denoted by H. The somatic antigen, which is on the surface of the bacterial cell wall, is called as O antigen. And above the surface antigen, there is one more layer which is also surface antigen only, which is called as VI antigen. So there are total 3 antigens which are important in these bacteria. Now we'll know one by one. H antigen. H antigen is nothing but a flagellar antigen, which is a heat labile protein destroyed by boiling or treatment with alcohol. If you mix these antigen with antisera, it produces large, loose, fluffy clumps. That is in the antigen-antibody reaction. It is strongly immunogenic. What does it mean? Immunogenic means they can elicit the antibody response very nicely. That is why it is called as immunogenic. Induces antibody formation very nicely. So if you detect the antibody, that could be a basis of diagnosis of this disease, that is typhoid caused by Salmonella typhi. Coming to the O antigen. O antigen is again a surface antigen which is present in the cell wall. It is made up of phospholipid protein polysaccharide complex, which is an integral part of the cell wall. It is identical with the endotoxin. You know that exotoxin and endotoxin. Endotoxin is the toxin which is released outside the body. Example are Staphylococci or Corynebacterium diphtheriae. Okay, we have learned that Corynebacterium diphtheriae. And endotoxin is the part of the cell wall. So this O antigen, which is identical with that of endotoxin, it can be extracted with the trichloroacetic acid. Treatment with phenol splits off protein moiety, removing the antigenicity but retaining the toxicity of the complex. Unaffected by boiling, alcohol or weak acids. It is not as of H antigen, which is destroyed when you heat or get a boil, but O antigen does not get affected with the boiling, alcohol or weak acids. If you mix this antigen with antisera, produces compact, chalky, granular clumps at the high temperature 50 to 55 degrees Celsius. So if you want to detect the antibody against the O antigen, you need to incubate the antigen antibody reaction in the water bath adjusted to temperature of 50 to 55 degrees Celsius. That is the optimum temperature required to have the antigen antibody reactions. Otherwise you will not get the reaction. And these are the less immunogenic. So detecting the antibody against O antigen will not be helpful, but detecting against antibody against the H antigen are very helpful in diagnosis of typhoid. The third antigen which is present in the Salmonella is VI antigen. The majority of strain fail to agglutinate with O antisera due to the presence of surface antigen made up of polysaccharide enveloping O antigen. So what do you mean by that? O antigen is there on the surface antigen, cell wall surfaces. Above that, this VI antigen is there. So if you try to detect the O antigen, antibody against O antigen, and if VI antigen is masking this O antigen, the O antibody will not be detected because it has been masked by the VI antigen. So what do we do then? You have to remove that VI antigen to find out the antibody against the O antigen. Felix and Pitt describe it as a related to virulence, so gave name as a VI antigen. These are the two scientists who described this VI antigen on the surface of O antigen and it is related to virulence of that organism. So that is why from virulence they have taken the VI antigen. It is a heat labile. After boiling at 60 degrees Celsius for 1 hour, bacilli are able to agglutinate with the O antisera. So what do we need to do? To detect the antibodies against O antigen, we need to boil the sera at 60 degrees Celsius to kill this V antigen or to remove this V antigen. Otherwise, you will not get the antibody for O antigen. It can also be destroyed by normal HCl and NaOH. It is unaffected by alcohol or 0.2% of formol or formaldehyde. It lost after serial subculture. What does it mean? If I have an isolate today, if I subculture that organism after every week, after several weeks, this V antigen will not be there on the surface of the O antigen. So we will be getting only O antigen on the surface of the bacteria. They act by inhibiting phagocytosis, resisting complement activation and bacterial lysis. So this is very important antigen which helps bacteria to survive in the human or host. They are also poorly immunogenic. You can convert H to O variation. What does it mean that? This is the phenotypic variation. You know that and genotypic variation and phenotypic variation. In the genotypic variation, it can occur because of addition or deletion of amino acids. That is natural. That virus is, that organism is responsible for that. You must be knowing now, in UK they have got a variant of COVID-19 virus variant, okay, because of the mutation, which it seems that it is deadliest than the current virus. So if you want to change the flagellar antigen to the non-flagellar antigen, or if you want to remove the flagella from the bacteria temporarily, phenotypic, only temporarily you can remove the flagella. How? We can grow this organism in the medium containing the agar. If you have a phenol agar, of course, if the agar containing phenol, it inhibits the flagella. This is the temporary phenotypic change. It means that you are removing mechanically H antigen from that bacteria. The bacteria will not develop the flagella and they become the only non-motile or non-flagellated. So this can be possible in a Craig's tube where you can add agar containing phenol. You can see here in the diagram, this is the agar and with the phenol, and this is a small tube, hollow tube. You just inoculate the bacteria into it and you will not see the growth around the tube if it becomes the non-motile. Phase variation can be seen in this. Flagellar antigen occurs in two phases. Phase 1 is species specific and phase 2 is a non-specific. Phase 1 antigen is generally designated as A, B, C, D and after Z, Z1, Z2 like that. And phase 2 antigen are fewer and termed as 1, 2, 3. And those strains which possesses both the phase of antigen, they are called as diphasic. Then there is one more variation which is V2W variation. What does it mean that? Smooth antigen. VI antigen masks the O antigen. So you just have to remove that. You just subculture this, you will use the VI antigen. Then S2R variation, smooth to rough variation. The change in the colony morphology. This is called as smooth to rough variation. Now coming to the classification and nomenclature of this bacteria. Kaufmann and White scheme is there. The basis of this classification is on the antigenic characterization, and the species were also named on the basis of animal source. If you have detected the Gallinarum, it means that it has been isolated from some animal. Sometimes the species name is given on the discoverer name, Scott Mullery, who is the scientist. Then some of the strains have been named after a patient, name of the patient, Thompson. Because these are antigenic variation, these are different than the previous one. Some of the isolate have been detected on the or named on the basis of isolation, place of isolation, Pune, Salmonella Puna. There is one more also, Salmonella Kirki, Khadki madna they have detected, and also basis of the disease, Salmonella typhi. If you look at the serotypes means based upon the antigenic variation. Now we have seen phase 1, phase 2 antigen variation. On basis of that, there are 2400. This is very old data. More than that might be there now. 2400 serotypes are there. Excuse me. Now coming to the biochemical reactions of Salmonella subgenera. Subgenera are divided into class 1, 2, 3, 4, and on the left you can see there are tests: lactose, dulcitol, D-tartarate, malonate, salicin and potassium cyanide, and which is only degraded by the group 4. This is the only strain which can utilize this potassium cyanide. Otherwise others are not able to do that. Now coming to the one of the important aspect, that is the pathogenicity. It is a strict parasite of animals and humans. Causes clinical syndromes, 3 different clinical syndromes. One is the enteric fever, which is commonly seen. Then septicemia. Septicemia is nothing but the organism present in the blood and multiplying at the same time. And then food poisoning. These are the 3 clinical syndromes which are caused by Salmonella species. Now we will see one by one. The enteric fever. Enteric fever is prevalent all over the world, and generally it is acquired by ingestion. If you are having the contaminated food, and through that the patient get the infections. Incubation period is generally 7 to 14 days. Now you might have heard about this incubation period, which is very important. It is the time period taken by the organism to enter in the body and show the signs and symptoms. That is called as incubation period. Okay. It attaches to the microvilli of the ileal mucosa and then penetrate to the lamina propria and submucosa. Because of that, fimri, which is present all over the body of the bacteria. Usually what happens? It gets phagocytosed by the polymorphs and macrophages. So these are the important cells which takes part in the innate immune mechanism. We have these cells in our body wandering throughout our blood system, lymphatic system, and they take care of this bacteria by phagocytosing. But somehow if they escape this phagocytosis, then they enter mesenteric lymph nodes where they multiply and via thoracic duct enter the bloodstream. Once they enter the bloodstream, they causes the septicemia. Bacteria are seeded in liver, gallbladder, spleen, bone marrow, lymph nodes, even in the lungs and kidneys, and there they multiply. After which clinical syndrome onset starts. They multiply abundantly in the gallbladder, as bile is the good culture medium. In gallbladder you have bile, and that is a useful medium for propagation and multiplication of this bacteria, from which they enter into intestine, where it involves Peyer's patches and lymphoid follicles ileum, due to which it undergoes necrosis and leaving behind the ulcers. Onset is usually gradual, very slow process. It starts with headache, malaise, anorexia, coated tongue, abdominal discomfort with constipation and diarrhea, or diarrhea of course. Typical features include step ladder pyrexia with relative bradycardia and toxemia. Fever doesn't come throughout the day, okay, it comes generally in the evening, and it is mild fever. Hepatomegaly is very common. Complications of this infection is enteric fever is intestinal perforation, hemorrhage and circular collapse. Rarely bronchitis because it is involving the lung system, or bronchopneumonia. Convalescence is very slow, about 5 to 10% relapse is seen in this patient. This is the pictorial diagram of the pathogenesis. What is happening? This is the bacterial cell. It attaches to the intestinal lumen, and then generally what happens? They are phagocytosed. Okay, these are the phagocytic cells. They are generally phagocytosed, but usually if the more organisms are there and these phagocytic cells are less, they what happens? They enter into the lumen, and then they establish themselves and they reaches towards the systemic way. And sometimes dendritic cells are also useful in taking care of these bacteria by killing directly these bacteria before entering into the intestinal lumen. Now coming to the epidemiology, why do we study the epidemiology? To know the pattern of the disease, in which part of the country, in which part of the world this disease is rampant or disease is endemic, pandemic, whatever. Okay, it is eliminated from developed countries. What is the reason of elimination from the developed countries? Because they have a good personal hygiene and even the good sanitation practices. Endemic in India. Endemic means constantly you will see the typhoid cases, enteric fever, septicemia, food poisoning all the time, because we know our standard of personal hygiene and the sanitation processes. So that is why in India it is endemic. If any foreign comes to India, he or she will surely get this infection, because they cannot have the antibody or protective immunity for this bacteria, because they do not have the infection in their country. So once they come to India, they generally take bottled water, filtered water, right? So it is essential for them. But for us, we are happy-go-lucky. It doesn't matter for us, because we are used to these infections, because it is endemic in our country. What is the source of infection? Patient or the carrier. One of the beauty of this organism is it makes a person a carrier. The person does not suffer from the disease, but still it carries that bacteria in his body and infecting lots of people. One such person was Mary Mallon, who was a cook in one of the hotel, who had affected more than 200 people in her country. Convalescent carriers shed bacilline feces for 3 weeks to 3 months, which is quite long, after cure also. This is called as convalescent. The one who got cured of the disease, still he or she is ready to shed the bacilline feces for 3 weeks to 3 months. Then temporary carriers, those shed bacilli more than 3 months to less than 1 year. Chronic carrier, they shed the bacilli more than 1 year. That is 2 to 4% of people become chronic carrier. So we have to be aware of these people. If they do not have personal hygiene, and if they are preparing the food, the person who is eating that food might get the typhoid or enteric fever or the septicemia, whatever. Food poisoning basically, and typhoid. Food handlers or cooks, carriers are dangerous, and such dangerous carrier was Mary Mallon, who gave 7 outbreaks in the constantly from one hotel, affecting more than 200 people. Coming to the laboratory diagnosis of this disease, we can do the blood culture in initial phase, because we are interested in detecting the organism. Then feces culture, urine culture, other material based upon, you can also collect the bile, and other material for culture can also be used. Vidal test is the serological test, which is useful in diagnosis of typhoid. This could be one of the MCQ again. Demonstration of circular antigen can also be used for the laboratory diagnosis. For diagnosis of carriers, what do? You culture the species of that suspected person. If it grows the salmonella, it means that person is either a temporary carrier or the chronic carrier or the convalescent carrier, based upon infection, or we have to decide. Then demonstration of VI antigen can also be used, and sewer swab techniques can also be used. If I want to find out from particular house, I just collect the sewer swab and I cultivate on the selective media and see whether salmonella is there or not. One of the important tests, as I told you, to diagnosis of enteric fever is the Vidal test. Vidal test is very critical to interpret. Why? I'll tell you. We all know that antibodies are produced in the body after the infection. It requires at least 1 week, 5 to 7 days. If I collect the sample on the first or second day of the illness, and if I send that sample for the demonstration of antibody, the result will be negative. What would be the result then? Interpretation of your test, it will be negative. That means it doesn't mean that the patient does not have the typhoid. So you have to collect the sample in the second week, not in the first week, if you are detecting the antibody. So what do we do? Can we wait till 1 week to demonstrate the antibody? No. In the first week, you can either detect the antigen, or you can send a sample, blood sample, for cultivation. You can cultivate the bacteria from day first on the culture medium. For interpretation in the Vidal test, titer depends upon the stage of the disease. As I told you, in the first stage of the disease, there will be no antibody response, so Vidal test will be negative. So you will have to collect it in the second stage, okay, second week. paired sera to demonstrate the rise in titer. This is very important. If you collect this serum sample in the second week and after 15 days you again collect a sample and see the titer. If there is a rise in titer, it means it must be due to some other reasons. If the titer goes down, it must be because of the typhoid, which is why it is the term comes significant titer. What does it mean by that? Significant titer is nothing but if I taste the sample, serum sample of all of you including me, we will show some amount of antibody response to Vi antigen, O antigen, H antigen, because there are non-specific antibodies which will be reacting to these antibodies, these anti-seras. Okay, so that is why we will show some amount of antibody response, but that doesn't mean that we are actually suffering from the disease. So there has to be some threshold, there has to be some cutoff, that is called a significant titer. Significant titer for O antigen is more than 100 and for H antigen it is more than 200. If you get a titer of more than 100 in O antigen, yes, you can say that the patient was suffering from the typhoid or is suffering from the typhoid, and for H antigen the titer should be more than 200. Below that there could be two reasons again. One, it must be in the cure stage, or two, it must be non-specific immune response, which should be neglected. Anamnestic reaction is one of the important reactions which we will be seen in the Vidal test. What does it mean that? If you taste a sera of a person and you find out 1:1000 titer, after 15 days you see again 1:1000 titer, it means that it is the response which is unrelated to the than the typhoid. It means that it is unrelated response. It does not belong to the typhoid. So that is why it has given the high titer, which is constant. It is not going down. In the typhoid, the titer goes down. It doesn't remain constant. Okay, this is called as anamnestic reaction. Bacterial suspension used as antigen should be free from fimbria. That fimbria might interfere with the Vidal test. Cases treated early with chloramphenicol may show poor agglutination. So you have to know the history of the patient, that is antibiotic treatment, whether the patient is actually treated with the chloramphenicol or not. Prophylaxis, we know what does it mean by prophylaxis? Prevention. So it is controlled by general measures. What are the general measures? You must tell your patient, your relatives, wash your hands properly before meal or using toiletries and all that. It is very important to have a personal hygiene. And even if you are preparing the food, you must prepare well cooked food. You can take the vaccine which is available in the both form, killed as well as oral. Killed typhoid bacillus vaccine is available in 2 doses of 0.5 ml subcutaneous at interval of 4 to 6 weeks. And oral vaccine is available, which is called as typhoral vaccine. And this Salmonella typhi strain TY21A, which is 1 capsule orally on day 1, day 3 and day 5 is given. And treatment is generally chloramphenicol. You don't require any higher antibiotics. Chloramphenicol will take care of the enteric fever. So